So to finish off, let's take a look at the Nazi treatment of Jews from 1933 to 39, obviously escalating over time. Hitler, we've looked at the treatment of general minorities already, but Hitler reserved a special hatred for Jews, which leads to violent anti-Semitism as in persecution and racism towards Jews. There's a long-running hatred already throughout Europe of Jews being seen as Christ killers, which leads to systematic persecution. Jews are seen at the time to be a combination of all the worst minorities, and they are persecuted heavily due to the intolerance of them. So let's have a look at how the Nazis escalated this throughout their time in power. They used specific measures to force Jews out of Germany. Beginning, obviously, even before they get into power, you see it in Hitler's book Mein Kampf. And then, obviously, when they get into power, it all escalates. You see anti-Semitic propaganda. The Eternal Jew, called Der Stürmer. This was the art exhibition that you've looked at where it depicts the Jew, with his hand out, asking for money or looking for money, dishevelled and with a hammer and sickle because Jews are communists and things like that. Textbooks, also in schools, you get textbooks such as The Poisonous Mushroom. Elsewhere, you see posters which depict Jews as parasites leeching off the people of Germany. Newspapers such as Der Stürmer, The Stormer. Cinema would feature Jews with stereotypical features, evil-looking, with large noses, obsessed with wealth. Often, obviously, the Jew depicted as the bad guy, who, kind of capitalist hunt for wealth. I told you about the Nazi propaganda film about the Titanic, where it's crashed because it's a Jewish person and a capitalist trying to set the record and things like that for the journey across the Atlantic. So propaganda films in which Jews are depicted as the villains. You also then see the Eternal Jew exhibition of 1937, which stated that Jews were a threat from the start. This is an everlasting, throughout history, threat from Jewish people. All of these used to portray the Jews as untrustworthy and evil moneylenders. You've seen that with the images as well, where they're sneaky, what's going on behind closed doors. You remember the picture of the doctor with the patient waiting outside, and he's opening the door, and it's only ajar a little bit. It's like he's got something to hide. So this escalates further with boycotts of Jewish businesses. In March 1933, the SA stand guard outside Jewish businesses and turn customers away from Jewish shops, therefore enforcing a boycott. Shop windows were smashed and even had the word Jude or Jew written on them. The boycott was even extended to Jewish lawyers and doctors. People being told to only not use Jewish lawyers and doctors. This meant, realistically, the only people that would go to Jewish lawyers and doctors would be Jewish people themselves. This is a problem for Jewish people because it's a threat to their way of life, isn't it? If I'm a doctor or I'm a lawyer, suddenly the clientele, my customer base, has suddenly just shrunk massively, hasn't it? So it affects my income. What you're seeing here is the Nazis introducing steps to try to force the Jews to leave Germany. They're going to make life difficult for the Germans. They're going to gradually increase the persecution to try to force the Jews to leave. Then you'll see attacks on property, job losses, and the loss of social position. This is the Nazis making it very clear to Jews, you are not welcome in Nazi Germany, in this society. From the summer of 1933, signs saying Jews not wanted start to appear more often. We've seen those in like the rural areas with the signs at the entrance to the town saying no Jews welcome and things like that. Hitler orders the sacking of non-Aryan government workers and Jewish teachers. From May 1936, Jews were forbidden from joining the army. In 1936, professional activities of Jews were banned. And 1938, Jewish doctors and lawyers could only check other Jewish people. Remembering earlier, you said there were boycotts and it was kind of like suggested or made clear that you shouldn't use Jewish lawyers and doctors. Now it's formalized in law. One thing to note on these propaganda posters, not propaganda posters, but the banners saying no Jews welcome and things like that in towns, and even the propaganda ones saying the same, they were taken down during 1936 for the Olympics and then obviously put back up after the Olympics. The reason for that being you've got foreign visitors to the country and they wanted to hide the racism and anti-Semitism that was going on and make it look like Germany was a utopia. Obviously, you can't have racism in a utopia. Then you get the introduction of the Nuremberg Laws, 1935. This denies Jews their basic right of German citizenship, which also, as we said earlier, helps towards the unemployment statistics because they don't count towards it now, do they? The Reich citizenship law made Jews subjects, not citizens, making it very clear we don't consider. This means they are effectively now no longer protected by law. They lose the right to vote and marry Aryans. The law for the protection of German blood and honour to stop pollutants. So the name for that, imagine that. They lose the right to marry Aryans because the name for the law is the protection of German blood and honour. They see Jewish potential relations as a threat to the pure Aryan bloodline. So they are no longer allowed to marry Aryans. Then you get the loss of social freedoms. In 1934, Jews were banned from public places. 1938, Jewish students are excluded from schools. If Jews had non-Jewish first names, they had to add Israel or Sarah to their name and have a J stamped on their passport. So this is the, the dehumanizing of the Jews. This is just to make them, the message being you are all the same because they've all been given the same name. As far as the Nazis are concerned, all Jewish people are saying they do not care about you as individuals. You are Jewish, therefore you're all the same. It's massive racism. 1939, Jews are then forced to carry identity cards, and they are no longer allowed to buy chocolate. It's absolutely every single thing the Nazis can do to try to force Jewish people to leave Germany. The message is very clear. From 1941, obviously during the Second World War, Jews are now forced to wear a yellow Star of David to single them out as being different. Now, obviously, what you see here is these are rules by law, and combined with this, you have that constant bombardment of Nazi propaganda, Nazi indoctrination. So by the time we arrive in 1941, and Jews are being forced to wear that yellow Star of David, that means they will then be by now they now be subject to societal judgment, societal ridiculing, societal abuse, because the people of Germany have been told it's okay and it's right to treat Jews this way. All of this culminates in the final act, well, not the final act, but continued escalation. Obviously, before you get to the Holocaust, you get to Kristallnacht in 1938, the 9th and 10th of November. The reason for this being, Ernst von Rath, a German diplomat in Paris, was murdered by Herschel Grünspan, a Polish Jew. So what you have now is a German diplomat, a German politician murdered by a Jew. So Goebbels uses this to suggest a campaign of terror against Jews, as they had a reason to retaliate. This leads to Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. Anti-Jewish rioting from the SA and some civilians. Windows smashed and shops destroyed, which were owned by Jews. 191 synagogues are set on fire, 76 demolished, the death of 91 Jews, and the arrest of 20,000 Jews. These would be the ones who were trying to defend their businesses from attack. Many Germans were concerned about the level of violence, but obviously cannot publicly voice their opinion because, as well as all this indoctrination and propaganda, you've got the Nazi police state. So whilst this might concern you as a German citizen at the time, there's not much you can do about it because you've got the Gestapo, the SS, the SA, all these things that the Nazis have set up to make sure opposition cannot speak out. The media, which is obviously controlled by the Nazis and Goebbels, are going to claim that Kristallnacht was spontaneous rioting by the people of Germany, showing their genuine disdain for the German Jewish community. So the Nazis are going to spin this and say, no, this was a spontaneous outbreak of attacks on Jewish businesses because that is the will of the people, when in reality it's been whipped up and stirred up by Goebbels and the SA. Effectively, what you're looking at by now, Jewish social freedoms have been completely removed, and the purpose being what you've seen is a steady escalation of persecution to try to force Jewish people to leave Germany.